Hello and welcome to the Bodyline Pro podcast. My name is Isaac Osborne, founder and CEO of Bodyline Pro. In this podcast, we interview practitioners who use Bodyline Pro and some of the leading experts in the health industry who are committed to taking a scientific approach to improving the form and function of the body and the growth and development of their practice. This podcast is also available on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher. Be sure to check out the show notes for links. For more information about Bodyline Pro, visit bodylinepro.com. Welcome to episode 8 of the Bodyline Pro podcast. In this episode, our guest is Elisa Noel. Elisa graduated from Southern Illinois University with a master's degree in Kinesiology and Exercise Physiology and received a bachelor's degree in physical education from Weber State University. Through her tenure in physical education, Elisa has developed a thriving sports and wellness-based career, including teaching a variety of physical education courses for her alma mater at Southern Illinois, working as a personal trainer, group fitness instructor, and conditioning coach for the women's basketball program at Salt Lake Community College. In 2006, Elisa attended Utah College of Massage Therapy and became a licensed massage therapist. Shortly after, in 2007, Elisa attended the Guild for Structural Integration to become a certified structural integration practitioner. In 2009, Elisa studied again under renowned Emmett Hutchins, earning her advanced structural integration certificate. She, at the time of this podcast, was vice president of the Guild for Structural Integration. She is now the president for the Guild for Structural Integration. Elisa and I met back in 2007 when she attended the Guild for Structural Integration for her basic training, and we've been friends ever since. I was absolutely excited to have her on this podcast because we completely geek out on structural integration, have a great time talking about it, and there's some wonderful before and after photos that we talk about on the podcast. So if you're listening to the podcast, you might want to jump over to YouTube and check some of the photos out, the before and after photos, and when we're talking about what we're talking about. So without further ado, here's Elisa. Hi, Elisa. Welcome to the show. This is Elisa J. Noel, and she's a practitioner of structural integration. And so, I wanted to start the call and saying thank you for joining me today, and great to have you on. So I just want to ask you about structural integration. And but first, I want people to get to know you a little bit, and I want to know a little bit about your story. Like, it doesn't have to be long. It just how did you actually come to structural integration? Like, how did you even get involved with this stuff?
So, I originally was a personal trainer and working with athletic teams, and I got in an accident when I was training for the Chicago Marathon, and got sciatica pretty severely. So dealing with that for about 4 years, going through physical therapy and my own education of the kinesiology and biomechanics that I already had the background in, nothing was helping. And I came down to either a hip replacement or I've got to go try something.
How old were you?
Well, I was early 20s, maybe 24. Yeah, and they wanted to do a hip replacement. So
I've known you, for almost 10 years now? 10 years?
Yeah, 10 years.
So that was that 10 years ago?
I'm 38.
38. So
up there, yeah. So that was, I was 24. Must have been 24 when that happened.
Wow, so that was not that long ago, but long ago enough.
Yeah.
You've been practicing now for 10 years.
Yeah.
So what happened when you received this work? Like, obviously something happened.
Yeah. So the second session, I remember sitting there, she's working on my fibula, and I was like, I've never been touched like this. I've never had my body awareness, the way that she was bringing the awareness into my body. I'd never had that, the ideas, the things that she was saying, the call for movements. And it hit me that this is how I wanted to incorporate the knowledge I already had with my clients. This is what's missing in my knowledge of the body. And so I decided in the second session I wanted to train. And ironically, my sciatic pain didn't go away for the whole 10 sessions, but there were so many other changes that were happening during those 10 sessions that I kind of started to forget about it maybe, or I just wasn't so focused on this one issue that I came in for, which is awesome, which is what I love about the work, is that it kind of encompasses so much more than just your problem that you come in with. And so I think 6 months after the 10, I noticed that it was gone. And that was nice, that the sciatica, the reason why I came in, for the original 10 sessions had dissipated, the pain had dissipated. So that was nice. But it also showed me that it is a process, and every little increment that you get, small change that you get, can definitely grow and just be exponential in the future.
Build on those previous changes that you
yeah.
had before.
Yeah.
So this is the work of structural integration, correct?
Yes.
And, so how, if I may, so for anybody that's not familiar, that's watching this show, how would you define structural integration? How would you,
question.
like an elevator pitch kind of thing, because we don't want to spend too much time defining it. I want to get into the fun nitty gritty geek out stuff with what you're doing and how you practice and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I think it'd be important for people to understand structural integration and what is it? How would you define it?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a hard question. We could spend a lot of time, like you said, trying to define that. Mm-hmm. So I do Ida Rolf's 10 series of structural integration. There's some other offshoots of structural integration, and I do her 10 series is what I practice. Mm-hmm. And so basically, it's structural integration is a process. That's how I try to describe it to my clients and to my students first and foremost, is that it is a process, because I think that's the beautiful thing about it. The medium that we're working with is fascia and the nervous system. And so working in this 10-step process with the fascia, organizing and lengthening the tissue, working with call for movements to get the body integrated and in alignment so that it feels at ease. It works better with gravity. So that's like
alignment's kind of the key word there, right? Because you mentioned a little bit earlier that you came to the work yourself with sciatica, and then as you were going along in the process, you're like, I don't really care about the sciatica so more because now I'm feeling all these other areas changing, and that so the relationships of other areas of your body, so to speak.
Yeah. Relationship is definitely a key word as well. I would say alignment with the body and integration through the whole system. And that includes even, the bigger picture of your system, your whole kinesthetic sphere, your whole idea of what's around you. But the relationship of that as well is something that's really fun to play with the work.
So did you have, because you mentioned you were a personal trainer, like when you were personal training, did you think about when you were practicing as a personal trainer before you came to structural integration, were you thinking about those type of relationships? Were you thinking about, if I help change the pelvis, it's going to help this person's mechanics of their shoulder blades, so to speak? And so was that kind of opening for you, or is that or you looked at that kind of thing?
I think it was, I think that was the stumbling block of my education, was there wasn't enough about the relationship. And about the whole body as a system. It was a little bit too compartmentalized. And so, at least the way that I was with my studies, the way that I was trained. And so I was seeking out other areas of education, other people that I could study with during that time. So I was kind of searching already to get an idea of how to understand the body a little bit better. I was very concerned with body mechanics when I was training. When I started to training the athletic teams, I think I saw a lot of improvements when we really focused on the fundamentals and the body mechanics and just tweaking the little movements, the fine movements, and the changes that would have in their output. And so I was starting to open my eyes to that, but it still wasn't there until I had the 10 series. That really just opened a ton of doors for me and ideas.
So now you're practicing, is it mainly structural integration, or are you combining structural integration and personal training, or you keep them separate? Like,
So I keep them pretty separate. My practice is I pretty much do, that's what I do, is the 10 series of structural integration, and then the post 3 series and the advanced 5 series. I I studied a little bit with Robert Schleip and his functional fascial fitness. And I really like taking some of those components in with my clients. That I get a lot naturally I get a lot of people that are doing like triathlons and a lot of athletes. And so I help them within my practice. I don't take them to the gym, but I have them come in with their movements that they're doing in their sports or when they're in the gym working out. And I try to help their movements. So I do work with movement, but I'm not training actively in a gym with people.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Awesome. And then the other thing that you're doing, right, is you're teaching. You're teaching for the Guild for Structural Integration, correct?
Yes.
And are you teaching full-on classes, or are you teaching assistant? Like,
so for the last 5 years, I was Emmett Hutchins. Those of you who are familiar with the Guild or Rolfing, you've probably heard of Emmett Hutchins. I was Emmett Hutchins' assistant for the last 5 years, and Amber Burnham as well. And Amber and I have been teaching a few workshops together, co-teaching, and we've been doing that in anatomy labs and cadaver labs, and that's been really rad. It's been really fun. We start one this Thursday. We've been doing it kind of breaking up the 10 series. So we'll do sessions 1 through 3, and they trade the sessions, and then they go into the cadaver lab, and we do dissections as well. And so I've been co-teaching.
Just kind of like to hold the pause right there. Just a little bit more information on that, and even just plug it, if you will. Are you doing a session and then you're going in and you're kind of dissecting the session with cadavers?
Yeah. So we start this Thursday. We start our core hours. So we're going to do sessions 4 through 7. So we do a demo of the session, and then we usually, depending on how the day plays out, we usually go to the cadaver lab, and we kind of look at the body in that with those eyes, with those goggles, like 4th and 5th hour goggles. And then we'll do that with 6 and 7. And then the last day we actually go in and do a dissection, where we'll get to this workshop. We'll go in and we'll actually dissect the pelvis. And so that's pretty cool. That's
phenomenal.
Really fun.
I love it. Absolutely.
I've been co-teaching in that. And then this next fall, I'll start my first basic training as the lead instructor. So that's fun and exciting.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Congratulations. Yeah. That's a lot of fun.
That is fun.
What I would love to hear from you is the way I want to share it, kind of like the way I use the app. I love, and I can't take credit that I created this version of the app, so to speak, that's out right now. But it was off of ImageJ from Jeff Lynne, and I've gone off onto my own little realm with it. But one of the things I love so much about taking photos, so that's the one I want to talk to you about right now, is taking photos, is the before and afters of photos, and especially with structural integration, because structural integration is, it's about that relationship, it's about that alignment, and watching the changes in people's bodies. I got a huge, it was just every time I did it, I learned so much.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was pretty selfish in the sense that I wanted to create this app, and I was like, okay, then maybe I can sell it to other people, because of how much I love to look at that and watch that process. Yeah. And so for you, like how do you, like if I was a new client, say I was a new client and I came into your office, and how do you go about it? What do you do? I'm curious.
So I usually, I offer taking like before and after pictures with my clients, and I tell them the advantages of it. And usually at first, a lot of times they're like, oh, you're going to take pictures of my underwear. Because in Rolfing, we have our structural integration, we have them in what we call viewing clothes. So it's something similar to like a swimsuit or boxer briefs. And so I'll just explain to them that like you're saying, it is a process, and it's kind of fun to see some of the changes incrementally as we go through the process. Mm-hmm. I think feeling them is more important, but I've really, through taking these pictures, I've really seen how it really helps people to see the changes and then to start feeling it kinesthetically. And so especially those clients that are having a problem or some kind of a disconnect, feeling some things that are happening in their body, I think that using this app has really helped them to see it, and then they go and they have this image and they go and they feel it. And it's been really fun. And I've loved that you've added the movement part. I think I told you when you first did it that I can't wait for the movement, for the video to come in, because I've loved doing the videos before and afters with my clients.
So, yeah. How do you use the videos? Like, what do you do?
So I do, so pre-session, I usually have them do a few functional movements that were, depending on which session we're on.
Like,
usually
can you give an example?
Yeah. So I'll have them do maybe a little knee bend. So, and there's a lot of things I'm looking for in the knee bend, obviously, and they see a little bit of different things than I'm going to see, but it does give me a lot of indication what's happening when they're walking or when they're sitting or when they're just in their regular life. I'll have them do a knee bend. I have them maybe walk, just take a stroll towards me and back. And then I'll have them maybe do like an arms overhead, which gives me a lot of information on the relationship of their shoulder girdle and their rib cage and their spine. It gives me a lot of information on their spine. And sometimes sitting, I'll have them just sit and stand, depending on what they're after and what they present is the movement that I'll do. But those are kind of the general ones that I'll have them do.
So say I'm the client, you'll have me kind of do like you said a knee bend. So it's kind of like a squat kind of.
Yeah, like a mini squat.
So like you'll watch them, you'll film from the side maybe and see them sit, film them sitting kind of thing. And then when do you follow up? Do you follow up the same session, like later on? Like how does that work, and what are you seeing?
I usually so I'll try to do it before the first session is when I want to kind of get my baseline. And then depending on the session, if we have a lower body session, maybe I'll do a knee bend after the lower body session and just show them what's happening. It's really helped. Oftentimes it's helped in correcting movements too. Like they're like, I didn't realize that, when I sit, I'm sitting in the back of my sacrum or, whatever they present. But it really is dependent on the person. I don't do the movements every time because just for the sake of time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I find definitely before one, and then in the core hours somewhere, I'll do a video. And then at the end of the sessions, I'll do another video. Cool. And I try to get the pictures, the still pictures I'll do depending on, again, the client, but I almost always get before one pictures and after 10 pictures with my clients. Some clients I'll do each session. If they're kids, this has been really fun with kids. I find that the kids love the pictures. I mean, they just can't wait to see, like, can I look at them? Like before they even, get their shirts on, and because they're usually wearing like basketball shorts or something, but before they get their shirts on, they're running over to the camera and they're like, can I see him? Can I see him? And so that's been really fun because I've seen kids open up with the pictures. They start to really get excited about the changes because they're oftentimes kids, they're fine. How you feeling? I'm good. Right. There's not a lot of feedback. Right. And this kind of opens them up to the possibility of like what can happen and how they can feel better.
It's funny you say that because I was working with this teenager yesterday and we took photos and, when I was explaining to him what's kind of, I love to sit there and kind of go, okay. At first I always ask the client in my practice, what do you see? I ask them, what do they see?
Yeah.
Based off of an alignment, what they would guess what alignment is. And so they point a few things out, and then I'll say, well, I see this and this and this, and it'd be neat to see this kind of change this way or this way. And so I was doing that with this kid who was like 15, I think, yesterday. And he saw the issues and stuff like that. Did some work with him. He felt the little changes. He felt some changes. But then when we did the right after session changes, he saw the photos, and it wasn't until, like, kind of like what you were saying earlier, it wasn't until he saw those photos that he realized how bad it was before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it was cool because it was it was, he didn't really even feel the changes afterwards. And to see his body shift and change so much in just 1 hour, it's almost like then he starts to feel it. Kind of like what you were saying earlier about it helps them actually feel sometimes more to be able to see the changes and have that feedback. Is that your experience? Is that kind of like what you were saying, what you were talking about in your experience too? That's cool that you're having the same experience, because it's such a neat tool to be able to have that.
Yeah, it really is.
Awesome. And so, when you're using it in your practice, you're using I'm stoked that you're using the videos too, and you're so stoked. They're a lot of fun to use. And you're seeing the before and after photos, and you also are using it teaching as well, right? And what's your experience with that?
So I've been lucky. I think you talked a little bit about in the classroom when we used Image J. We got to use that when we were teaching the Basic 10 series. So I was really lucky after I trained originally, which you were in that class. You were my assistant. It was awesome. I basically planted myself in the classroom and took pictures for about 5 years of every class that came through. I was in that training and I was taking the pictures. And so I saw thousands of before and after pictures. And so I really developed an appreciation for this tool for teaching. And we did use Image J, and I'm loving with this, I feel like it's not as finicky. Like it was so finicky. If we had one little bump, it's going to be off. And this is just a lot easier to just manage. Right. And so what I've found, other than what we've talked about with the clients and seeing and then feeling the changes, what I've loved as a teaching tool is for the students to see this as a process through the 10. And so we do before and after every session with the models that come in and with the students when they're receiving the work. And so we've used it as a tool to see so that they start to develop their eyes so they can start to see changes. It's hard when you first are beginning to see these small incremental changes that happen each session. And then every once in a while you get the wow session. We talk about the wow session that you don't even almost need pictures for, but it's fun to show people the pictures.
Sure.
But it's fun to train their eyes. We'll show them what we're seeing because we can't have a client standing there all the time and you can't remember the before. And so we'll train them or help them to see the small incremental changes, but also to take it and look at the session before and then the next session and how that session built on this next session that we're in now, and then talk about the future session. And so we can go look session 1, 2, 3, 4, and just see this whole process and see the whole body, just how it's accommodating all of these changes and shifts through the process. And so I think as a teaching tool, that has been invaluable for students to be able to see that process.
Awesome. So you said something that's something that I've always thought about, and I want to just explore this a little bit with you. I want to be also mindful of your time. We have about 15 more minutes.
Yeah.
You said that people don't remember what, like the before. Right? So say you weren't using photos or even using video, and to remember what somebody looks like before, say you do 20 minutes of a first hour, a second hour, a third hour of work or whatever, or any body work for that matter, just for relating to people who don't do structural integration. To remember exactly what that person looks like before, and then when they stand up, because structural integration, we stand people up to see if there's any changes in gravity, right? To stand up in gravity and to go, oh, that changed. Because I've made the mistake before of going, oh, that looked like a change, and I take photos, and it did not change.
Yeah, that happens. Sometimes that happens too, where you're like, wow, and then you're looking like, oh, wait, I must not have, like, my caption before in my head was not accurate.
So can you speak to that? I mean, like, just that the ability to be able to go back to that photo. Like, how has that changed? I mean, your work, so to speak, Well, it's kind of hard to say how has that changed your practice, because you actually ended up using this so much in your practice because of being involved in the classroom for so long.
Yeah.
That's kind of that's how it was for me too.
Yeah.
I was assisting Emmett, and I was in charge of the Image J, and it just eye-opening just to watch thousands of photos go by,
Mm-hmm.
So maybe just if you can speak a little bit to that, like thoughts on that.
So
like if I was a student maybe in the class and you guys talk about that kind of thing, like what do you tell the students about that? How do you educate them on that?
On using it in their practice?
Yeah.
So I often don't have to, because they enjoy it so much in the classroom that they're like, oh, I really want to, like, they see how excited it is for the clients to see these before and afters. And honestly, sometimes you'll have clients, and I was one of them, that I didn't want to see it because I just felt. I was like, I want to feel this, and maybe at the end I'll look, and it is fun at the end to kind of see. But sometimes you'll have them that they're like, I'm good. I feel wonderful. I'm going to take that and move on, which is great during the core hours, because sometimes you don't always look better in the core hours, but you feel fine. You're feeling the functions coming into the body. Right. But it still is such a useful tool. Every once in a while, I'll have a student, they'll be asking me about a client or a model that's coming in, and we have a lot. And so I need to maybe remember what's happening. And so we'll go and look at the pictures, and that's been really beneficial to say, oh, you have a client coming in and you're wondering what you need to do, and you don't have a lot of time to sit there and view them before the session, but you have their picture right there of the last session after. So take a look, see, what you can see in the picture. And then when they come in, they don't have to stand there as long and awkwardly, and you can get to work a little bit better.
So in a lot of ways, it's like you're strategizing the session.
Yeah. It really does help with the time. I think time, and also, sometimes when I have time in between clients, I like to study my pictures and just see, what's happening, what's not happening. Sometimes I'll see patterns that are coming in, and I wonder if that's me or if that's the work. And I think it's good to just keep checking your work as well. Make sure the client is maintaining their length after the 7th session. That's a big one that we show the students. We want to, after the 7th hour, you should maintain that length, that the idea of getting down to get up in the 8th hour. Make sure you're not working too hard. You're not getting them shorter. So it's been really, the pictures has been the thing I think mostly that we've been able to teach from with that respect, is to look at the 7th hour. It's usually the big, up hour. And then we have an 8th hour. And oftentimes in the past, people have worked too hard and they get a little bit shorter in the 8th hour. But you can't see that. You don't remember that. So, and I think that's you as a practitioner. So you need to check yourself. And the pictures really helped with that.
Right. And for those that are watching the video don't really understand that the 10-session process, each session has goals that is looking for in certain areas of the body that it's working with to try to achieve those goals. And based off of each person's, particular functions and dysfunctions, you want to be able to strategize whatever it is, apply that recipe to that person so that they can it's customized to them, so to speak. Like it's either a chocolate cake or a vanilla cake, but it's the same base recipe, right? So awesome, that's fantastic. And then so you play with Robert Schleip's movement stuff. Have you used the app with the movement stuff at all? Like have you done anything with that?
I haven't, honestly. I haven't. I've been playing it more with myself and my own practice, and then little tidbits. So I would like to get a little bit more education around it before I were to kind of take it to that level where I'm really working with clients individually. So I haven't done as much. We have a little bit in the classroom, like little tidbits, but not as much. That's what I'm actually working towards. That's kind of my next rung that I'm hoping to get to.
Cool. Awesome. So do you have any before and after stuff that you would like to just kind of play with and go over and geek out on today together?
Sure. So let's see here.
Yeah, I was going to compare. So this is from April to July.
Yes, April to July of last year.
Is this the before one?
So yes, before one.
Now,
And,
if I may ask,
yeah,
when you're taking photos, are you using a tripod? Are you doing it by hand?
I use a tripod with a square shot.
Okay, cool. And is that tripod always in the same spot so it never moves, or does it move around? Or
I move it with every session, but I think you can kind of see by his feet, I have a little,
oh, yeah.
like an X,
Mm-hmm.
and I have the similar one just to show me where my tripod goes.
Cool,
So,
awesome.
yeah.
So this is before one of structural integration.
Before the first session,
Uh-huh.
let's see.
So wait, go back. So for fun, like
Yeah.
tell me a little about this guy. Like did he come with you because of ailments?
Yes.
What did he come in? What did he come in with?
He came in with sciatica.
Uh-huh.
And also I believe it was his left shoulder. He has a little bit of hypermobility in his joints, in all of his joints pretty much. And so he came in to get a little bit more stable in his joints. His left shoulder would just go out of socket consistently, regularly. And so he came in for the sciatica and then later on the other things come up that, oh, can you help with that? Like my shoulder's constantly coming out. That became something we worked with.
Cool. And let's see, before we do the afters, let's go 360 degrees around and see the other sides of his body.
So you've got the forward, you've got left side.
Wow.
And this is me, and I honestly coached a little bit. I coach them to just look straight ahead. I like to see where their horizon is.
Sure.
I don't coach, how to hold the head, because that's information we want to know what their pattern is.
I'm glad you said that, because that's something that I have, like, I forgot to ask about in this show here, is that, do you coach people how to stand, or you just let them stand naturally so that you can see what your work has done? Before
the first session, honestly, sometimes I do have them bring their legs in, because for me, in my eyes, it shows strain up the body a little bit better. So I like to see that. I like to take a snapshot of how they stand. What's their, it's showing you my board meeting. I like to see their, what's comfortable for them. Where's their world when they're just standing. And so if it's legs out wide, feet out wide, I might say, can we bring them in just a little bit? Because it does show me a little bit more of the specific changes.
But you're not saying hold your shoulders here.
No.
Head here. Like
I always, in fact, if I were to coach anything, it's to just let down. Let down, relax, just take a deep breath, and then, once they get settled is when I take the picture.
So, a little bit of body reading here. Like, if I say I was a student, or say I'm even this guy here, what would you say? Like, what would you point out?
Well, what comes obviously, the almost obvious thing for me is his relationship of his head and his shoulder girdle is probably the first thing. From this view, I see something different in every view. There's something that kind of comes out to me. But if you were to maybe drop a plumb line down, I mean, honestly, if you were to look at his center line, from the, you can't see my finger. We can draw on this app though, which is amazing.
Draw. Use the drawing tool.
Mess it up, and it takes me a minute. So, if you were to look at his, the meatus of the ear to the humerus and the elbow and the greater trochanter and the knee and the ankle, I mean, it looks pretty straightforward. But then if you were to look at the, the extraneous, you can see where his blocks are shifted just a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what does his right side look like compared to his left side?
So there's his right side.
Different, huh? Than the left.
Yeah. Pretty significant difference, I would say, with the sides. You don't always see that much of a difference. So And that's always interesting too, to show to students, especially as we have a preference of what side. You usually have a side that maybe stacks up a little bit better than another side.
Absolutely. And what does his back look like? Wow.
So I think in the back you can kind of see why maybe he's having some sciatic pain.
So how would you say that? What would you say?
His spine.
I think I know what you're talking about, but how would you explain that to somebody who doesn't? Like, what would you say?
So, if I'm talking to a student, it's going to be different than if I'm talking to a client.
Let's take from the client perspective right now.
Okay. So from the client perspective, I would probably point out to him after he tells me how he feels, which is always the most important. Sure. I would probably point out maybe his pelvis, if you were to look at his pelvis and how it's situated, and then the relationship of how the legs are coming out of the pelvis. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how the legs are supporting the pelvis, and then if you were to take your gaze up into the spine, you see just a little bit of a shift in his spine. Mm-hmm. So just point out just a few of those little obvious things that you can see through just the static picture.
Oh, you know what we can see?
Yes, tell me what you see.
We can see the arrow on here. If you move that arrow around with your mouse or trackpad on your computer, you can point to areas on his body.
Oh, there you go.
Hey.
So that's great. So you can see if you were to PSIS versus PSIS, you see just a little bit of a asymmetry here in the pelvis. Mm-hmm. And his sciatica was in his left hip. Mm-hmm. So it was coming down. And even if you were to get a little bit more specific, and we would look at this probably later in the sessions, but the relationship of his deep rotators, how they're letting out or not letting out here, imagining that sciatic nerve coming down into his leg. That's something that I noticed right away with him, and you could feel right away with him in the first session. Mm-hmm. And then also if you were to look at the legs coming down and how they're supporting his whole structure. Mm-hmm. And he mentioned that from the beginning, his lack of feeling stable in his legs. Mm-hmm. And so when he saw his pictures, he was like, well, I'm not. And he's like, that's why I'm not feeling. I'm not.
Good for him, huh?
Yeah, it did. It was fun. This was a fun client, not only because he's just a great guy, but he really appreciated the pictures. He was really excited about those pictures, the before and afters, to show his colleagues.
Cool. So what does his after look like? Let's check it out.
All right. Let's go back facing forward. So here's his after. The lighting changed a little in my office. I need to get a curtain over here. So you can see, immediately the up in his whole structure.
Yeah.
We talk a lot in structural integration about, and this might be like a Amberism or Emmetism or Elisaism, I'm not even sure, but we talk a little bit about, when we talk about the core, the 4 inches. So if you were to look at his core structure and how it's supporting him, the 4 inches, meaning really just from right down the center line. Mm-hmm. I think that's I'm going to go to the back, the first one. I think that's really the big change of how he just gets more center of gravity. We talk about like radius of a gyration. So he just gets more narrow and up in that, in this view of before and after facing him, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Especially from like the sternal notch to like
that space. That's a big, that was a
costal arch area.
Yeah, that was a big jump for him.
Yeah, he really lengthened through there a lot.
Mm-hmm. Can we see the side?
Yeah.
So this is before, after. Mm-hmm. So you can see, his spine shifted. Mm-hmm. You can see the lumbar is getting, coming back and getting a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. But the relationship of his, like you're saying, we call it thoracic outlet area, really, really changed for him. It's fun.
Look at the shape of his glutes.
Yeah.
In that before photo, and then look at the shape of the glutes in the after photo. Mm-hmm. It's completely different.
Yeah.
As Emmett would say, he's got more of an ass.
Yeah.
But can you speak to that a little bit, like in the sense that that what happened there? Like through the pelvic floor, like did his tilt change? Like
I would say both.
Front, like what happened?
I would say so I was really interested in his primary flexion, which is right in here, primary flexion, where we bend from primarily. He was really using his secondary I call it the secondary flexion. He was using that as his primary flexion. Mm-hmm. So he was originally initiating all of his movement from up here, and you can see that in the before picture. Mm-hmm. So once we started really getting this primary flexion opened up and realizing like, oh, this is where I need to be moving from and bending from, it really shifted his whole structure. He came up. So I think getting space here and getting length here, also getting those deep rotators opened up. I mean, it's a process, so I can't say what shifted, but what we're seeing is that his deep six have gotten more length. His pelvic floor, I would assume, probably has a little bit more tone. Mm-hmm. And you can see that through the inner leg line in his forward. You can see if you were to look at I wish he was wearing the same shorts, but you can see what we call the inner leg line or fourth hour line really has a lot more lift and integrity. Mm-hmm. So I would assume in movement that he's really using that function of his inner leg line a lot better.
Cool. Well, I don't want to keep you much longer. I think we could go on for hours on this.
I know, it's fun.
It's so much fun. So we'll have to do another call and some other time. And because I want to be respectful of your time, and we're already a couple minutes over from your board meeting. But thank you so much for coming on the show with me today, Elisa. I really enjoyed this. It was a lot of fun, and I think we should maybe started this little part of it earlier because we're just really geeking out here.
I know. I'm like, I don't need to go to the board meeting. Just kidding. GSI people, I do. I'll be there.
Thank you for watching the Body Align Pro podcast. For more information, visit bodyalignpro.com. You can download the app for free on the Apple App Store. This podcast is also available on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher. Be sure to check out the show notes for links. If you are enjoying this, please be sure to subscribe and share this with your friends and family. Once again, thanks for watching, and see you next time.